All right, now that you know how to not only write chords for a piano player, but also write chords in certain styles, a jazzy style, a show style, and Latin, all that kind of stuff, you're going to start practicing harmonizing music. We're going to add chords to certain melodies. So that involves, of course, harmonization. Harmonization, the process of adding chords to a piece of music. Make it more full, add accompaniment. All right, so the easiest type of harmony uses just the three primary triads, which we've been doing: a 1 chord, a 4 chord, and a 5 chord, as well as 5/7, of course, to harmonize the tune. So the steps to adding chords to a tune: first, you determine the key. That should be easy enough. Write out the primary chords for that key. So in other words, ground yourself in terms of what the chords are that I'm going to be using. Work out the harmonic rhythm of the music, that is how often the chords change. If, for example, the majority of the notes in the song use scale degrees 1, 3, and 5, you might as well use a 1 chord for pretty much the whole song, because a 1 chord uses notes 1, 3, and 5. But if in a certain part of the music the notes change and they use scale degrees 4 and 6 a lot, then you're going to want to go to a 4 chord, because the 4 chord has scale degrees 4 and 6, and it'll sound good harmonically. Step 4, choose the appropriate chords based on the notes in the given melody. So obviously, like I just said, you're seeing what notes are being used in the melody, and you're making the musically intelligent decision as to which chord would fit the best. And then finally, you're going to write the accompaniment pattern, voicing the chords appropriately, using the chords you chose. All right, so what they're doing here on this page is showing you a worked example, basically a model of what they've done. So let's say we've the task of writing a piano part to the traditional song, "You Are My Sunshine." We've been given the melody and nothing else. So the melody looks like this, and I'll play it for you. In a cut time, it goes kind of quick. You are my sunshine. And you're feeling that half note pulse. My only sunshine. All right. So step 1 is, of course, determine the key. You can see by analyzing the music, all right, we've got 1 sharp. So that screams out G major, or possibly the relative minor, E minor. You can see that we're also ending, "Please don't take my sunshine away." We're ending on the note G. So that really is a dead ringer for the key of G major. All right, so that's step 1 is done. We determined the key, we're in G major. All right, so step 2 at the top of your page, you can see it says write out the primary chords for that key. The 1, 4, 5, and of course the 5/7. So when you do that, primary chords are right here. The 1 chord is, of course, the snowman, the triad built on 1, scale degree 1. The 4 chord built on scale degree 4, or C in this case. Scale degree 5 is D, so there's your triad, D, F sharp, A. And then the 5/7 chord, D, F sharp, A, and C. So the 1 chord is right here. And the 4 chord, the 5 chord, and the 5/7. The 5/7 chord really can be used generally when you want to go back to a 1 chord. Okay, any time you see a piece of music and you see a 5/7 chord or any kind of 7 chord, you can always replace it with just the basic triad. Just so you know, you can see visually on the staff as well, they're very, very close. It's the same triad, just with an added note on top to add a little more color. So, step 3, we've written out the primary chords for the key. So step 3, work out the harmonic rhythm of the music. So in other words, how often should the chords change, right? And here they're just giving you a little bit of metacognition stuff to think about. So this piece is quite fast. It is in cut time. So it doesn't need to change chords very often. Even 1 chord per bar would be too fast for this piece. 1, 2, 1, 2, chord change, chord change, chord change. Every 2 pulses, every 2 half notes, that could be even a little much for chord changes, right? So what we need to do then is decide where are the best spots in this music, in this melody, to change chords. All right. So what they're telling us is they're giving us a few hints, and they're saying. So they're saying the pickup notes do not need a chord at all. It's just a pickup. Those 3 beats at the beginning, there are 3 pickup notes. Doesn't matter. The chords can start on the first downbeat. Right. The chords can start at measure 1. Makes sense. With a tonic chord G. The B's and the G's in the music fit with the chord, right? And the A sharp is simply a passing inflection in the melody that doesn't need a chord change, all right? So they're basically saying the first 4 bars of this music, if you have a look at it, all right, don't worry about the pickup. The pickup's just a pickup. The chords can start here. Da 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 da. There's a B here, scale degree 3, 3, 3, 3. Now, a chromatic note, don't worry about it. 3, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. It's basically all 1s and 3s throughout this whole thing, right? So keep it simple. If you have basically 1s and 3s all the way through, you can basically have it be a G chord, a 1 chord, all the way through those first 4 bars. So what I'd like you to do real quick is just throw an uppercase G here. Oh, and actually I'll use a thicker pen so we can see it nice and clearly. Okay, a G chord over that first bar to indicate we're going to start with the G chord and make it last for all 4 bars here. Right? Okay, let's carry on and keep reading what the notes say at the bottom. So we're right here. The first change will come at measure 5. Where the C and E in the melody suggest a C chord, or the 4 chord. All right, notice in the melody, in bars 5 and 6, okay, that we've now gone C, E, E, D, C. You can treat that D also as a passing note. You don't have to harmonize every single note. Certainly, you'd be changing chords every single beat if you did that. We don't want you to do that. Get the structure and look at the gist of the notes that are being played in the melody. Here it's basically C, C, E, E, D, C, C's and E's. Or in other words, scale degree 4 and 6. Right? Scale degree 4 and 6 means a 4 chord could work. Or essentially a G, not a G, a C chord. A C chord is the 4 chord, and that's the one we're going to be using. All right, let's see what else they're talking about at the bottom here. It says measure 7 has a B in the melody again, so chord 1 will work again. Now, here we're basing our chord choice based on 1 single note. Okay, look at bar 7 and 8. Okay. Bar 7 has a whole note on the B, and so we certainly want to harmonize that note because it's lasting for a long time. Okay, and then at the other side here, we're walking up between B, C, D. So B and D. What chord uses a B and D? Well, again, this is why you have it written out here already. The 1 chord again is the best choice for that part of the chord. The 1 chord, or sorry, we're using letter names, so the G chord. Right? Okay, moving on. Oops, sorry. It says down here, measure 9 goes back to an E, so a C chord will fit again. All right, notice here we're back to D, 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 D. Lots of E's here, and the only chord in here that we're using that has an E, of course, is that 4 chord. The E is the middle of that C chord, so we're going to use a C there. Oops. If I could draw a C properly, that'd be nice. A C chord. Then finally it says measure 11 goes back to G. Measure 11, da, da, 6, scale degrees, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1. That screams out, of course, a G chord again. 3, 1, scale degrees 3 and 1, or in other words, B and G, which are part of the G chord. What does it say at the bottom? It says the A's in measure 14 suggest a D or D7 chord, which would be a good perfect cadence. We haven't talked about cadences, but don't worry about that. Good perfect cadence finishing on G in bar 15. So they're saying, in other words, here at the end, we've got a G chord, so G, B, G, da, da, da. That's this bar 13 still works on a G chord because the most important note is that B. B, C, A. Now here we have lots of A action happening. All right, and if you look at your chords, you can see that A exists in the 5 chord or the 5-7. Your choice. You can use a 5 or a 5-7, or in other words, D or D7, your call. We'll use a D chord. And then the last 2 bars, of course, is scale degree 1. It makes sense for most tunes to end on the 1 chord. All right, so let's just have a listen to this one more time. Don't forget that we've chosen these chords carefully based on the notes that are being played in the melody. All right, so the melody. And now I'm just going to play some block chords in the left hand. Sorry. Now, right in, what was it? Somewhere about here, I hit a wrong chord, and hopefully you heard it. I played a G chord in here where I should have played a C chord. And hopefully your ears kind of went sideways. Honestly, that was not meant to happen. But hopefully your ears heard that. You realized, oh, that chord that he played didn't work. Okay, had I played the right chord the first time, it would have just flowed and sounded like it fits. This is the musically intelligent way of figuring out which chords work for the notes that are being played in the melody. Now, let's go on to the next page. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so here you have basically the printed version of what we just did. They wrote a G chord for the first 4 bars, C chord for 2. It's exactly what we've got, except they use the D7 chord here. Big deal. Same thing. Step 5, of course, now is writing out the harmony in a suitable piano style. So, as this is in alla breve or cut time, a show 2 style would probably be appropriate with the root and fifth in the bass, root and fifth bass notes and offbeat chords in the right hand. Basically, they're describing what show 2 style is. You learned that in the previous lesson. Notice how we still kept the right hand chords moving as smoothly as possible, keeping common tones where we can. All right, so real quick down here, keeping common tones where they can. So they use the G chord in first inversion here, all the way through in the right hand. And then when you have to move to the C chord, what did they do? They didn't take this first inversion chord and move them all the way over. They basically just shifted a few notes so the right hand can stay in the same spot. So the left hand over here in these chords, in the G chord, B, D, G, and then to move to the C chord, all you got to do is take those two lower notes and move them up. So you got into, all right? And so by harmonizing, using the chords you've already done, and just making a piano part that fits those chord changes, I now have this piano part. So it sounds like this. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Oh, gray. If I can play the piano part. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Very poorly sung, but you get the idea. All right. Notice here also in the D7 chord, the one bar that has a D7 chord, look at the chord they did. Look at the notes they used. The root is here, the D, and they use the D here in the right hand as well. The F sharp is there as the middle of the triad. And then the C at the bottom of this right hand here, that's the 7th. And that's the 7 that gives that tension. And then back to a G chord. All right, so hopefully you're able to make that connection between figuring out how to write piano chords for a piano player into different styles, and then of course applying it to a piece of music. So I know this has been sort of a lengthier lesson, involves 2 pages of pretty intense, I would say pretty intense musical analysis. You have to see what's happening in the melody, and based on the notes that are being used, come up with the chord progressions, the appropriate chord to go at, that should sound at each spot. And once you have those chords, flush those out, those chord changes out, into a fully functioning piano accompaniment. All right, so that's the lesson. It's just seeing how they went through this process for You Are My Sunshine. Now that's it for this unit in terms of teaching new stuff and learning new skills. The next 2 pages really are you're getting some sample melodies that I'm sure you're familiar with, and you're going to grab some staff paper, some blank manuscript paper, and write out piano accompaniment parts for these well-known pieces of music, and in different styles, of course. Give it a try. And I'm going to want to hear, and we're going to maybe even try in class if we have time. We'll try and listen to some of your accompaniments and see how they sound. All right? Take care. Try those 4 exercises on the next 2 pages, and we'll see you in class.